Who is Vladimir? In League of Legends, Vladimir is an elusive battle mage that uses the power of blood to both inflict damage on his foes and heal himself in the process. He is mostly played in the mid lane and is very annoying to play against. In the lore, he is a master of blood magic and one of the two founding members of the Black Rose, the other being LeBlanc, or the mysterious Pale Lady as she's often referred to in the lore. He uses his blood magic to control the minds and bodies of Noxian nobles to further the schemes of both the Black Rose and his very own cult named the Crimson Circle to amass power and influence the Noxian political landscape. Despite residing in Noxus in the modern day, Vladimir was once a prince of Camavor some 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, which is a nation found far across the ocean to the east of the known world. More on Camavor in another video, but all you need to know for now is that Viego is also from Camavor. Now at this time in history, the corrupted godlike beings called the Darkin decided that they deserved to inherit the world, and as experts in dark magic, including blood magic, they did a pretty good job of enslaving huge numbers of humans across Ruination in pursuit of that world domination. Now, just to give you a kind of idea of timelines here, this was happening well before Piltover, Noxus, Demacia was all established. This is real old stuff, like ancient history kind of level of stuff here. One of the Darkin threatened to destroy Camavor, but Darkins being Darkins, they thought it would be more fun to force the king to give up his only child and impose that the king have no more children going forward, essentially forcing the king to watch his nation fall apart and possibly fall to civil war without a legitimate heir to take the throne. Vladimir was this child, and he was given over to the Darkin as a human hostage, and he would be killed if the king broke his oath and had more children, which of course he did many, many times. Upon discovering this, Vladimir expected the Darkin to destroy him, but the Darkin, again with a twisted sense of humour, instead offered Vladimir the chance to lead the Darkin's armies against his own father's kingdom, the kingdom of Camavor. Vladimir, feeling betrayed by his father, accepted this offer and led a military campaign against his home nation of Camavor. And Vladimir did very well. He almost entirely destroyed Camavor, and whilst the nation would live on, Vladimir had claimed the king's head, his father's head, to present to his Darkin master as a way to prove his loyalty to him. In return, Vladimir was granted a position of honour in the Darkin's army and became the first human in history to learn the art of hemomancy, or might be better known as blood magic. Vladimir was a natural at this as well, and he would use these talents to fight for his new Darkin master and over time secure himself quite a high-ranking position within that Darkin's military, or that Darkin's army. Eventually, the humans would ally themselves with the Aspects, which I'll go into in another video, but you can kind of think of them as non-corrupted godlike beings, and they began to overthrow the Darkin by sealing them away within specially crafted weapons, which is why we have those in the game today. Rast, Varus, Neferi, Aatrox, they're all Darkins that were sealed within weapons during this time period. Vladimir, being quite a senior general in this Darkin's army now, was tasked with protecting his master from this alliance of humans and Aspects. However, whilst in the Darkin service, Vladimir had been scheming and discovered a different way to defeat a Darkin, one that didn't require a specially crafted vessel to seal them in like the Aspects and humans were using, but instead, he found a way to simply kill them. Just straight up, dead Darkin. We don't know how, but we do know that Vladimir wasted no time murdering his master, and he used his power of blood magic to consume the Darkin's residual power once he had killed his master, granting him even greater abilities than he had already. One in particular was the ability to renew his own flesh, making Vladimir pretty much an immortal being. Now, some 500 to 1,000 years after this, Vladimir would find himself living in the eastern mountains of Valorant, and he was worshipped by the surrounding Noxii tribes as some sort of blood god. These Noxii tribes were being conquered by an undead necromantic iron revenant at the time, named Mordekaiser, with the aid of some very powerful sorceresses. Sorceresses? That's really hard to say. Powerful sorcerers. Nailed it. Now, one day, he was approached by one of these sorcerers from Mordekaiser's own court, the Pale Lady, and she shared her plan to overthrow her own master, the Iron Revenant, and they entered into an alliance which became known as the Black Rose. And it got its name from the nearby roses turning completely black with all the dark magic that LeBlanc and Vladimir were doing at this time. I don't know what they were doing, but it was some dark shit. The plan was that Vladimir would rally the Noxii tribes that worshipped him against Mordekaiser, and the Pale Lady, who we know as LeBlanc, would weaken Mordekaiser, allowing Vladimir's makeshift army to actually have a chance fighting against him. And it worked! Mordekaiser was cast back into the spirit realm, and the Noxii tribes would live in peace for only about 100 years or so. They had a pretty tough time. Just 75 years after Mordekaiser was banished, Viego, who is a distant relative of Vladimir by this point, would launch an attack on the island nation of Helia in an attempt to resurrect his dead wife. Vladimir would actually write a letter to Viego just before Viego's wife succumbed to poison, offering to help, but Viego, who was grief-stricken at the time and not really thinking clearly, didn't believe that Vlad could help and simply just didn't respond to the letter. And it's interesting to think what the world of Runeterra would look like today if Viego had responded, but he didn't, and with the ruination of Helia at Viego's hands, a huge number of dangerous artifacts would find their way into the world, and mages everywhere would utilize these artifacts to bring untold levels of destruction to the people of Runeterra. The scattered Noxian tribes, as well as Vladimir and his new best friend LeBlanc, would retreat into the Immortal Bastion as a place of safety during this time. The Rune Wars, as they came to be known, would only last for about 25 years, and when they ended, the Noxian tribes who went into the Immortal Bastion emerged as a single people, no longer the scattered tribes that they were when they went in, but now a single people, the citizens of Noxus. This was year 0 on the Noxian calendar and represents the birth of Noxus, and today we're in the year 997, so this was a while back. And we know almost nothing specific about Vladimir's activity over this near 1,000-year time span, only that he spent most of it as a recluse. And every now and then, Vladimir would thrust himself into the spotlight and influence Noxian politics from the front lines as a charismatic politician, before slinking away again into isolation after he'd achieved whatever it is that he wanted to achieve. And he would do this a few times over the past 1,000 years. We don't know how many, but we do know that he was leaving enough of a gap between turning up for people to forget who he was before appearing again. This is very different to LeBlanc and the rest of the Black Rose, who seem to be more than happy to only ever scheme from the shadows. That's their whole MO. Vladimir, although a recluse, does like to be center of attention on occasion. Though in the modern day, it seems that Vladimir hasn't waited very long this time round to reappear. He was active in Noxian politics just 20-ish years ago, and he'd helped to resurrect a long-dead warrior named Scion on Order of the Black Rose. This went very wrong, and the Emperor at the time, Borom Darkwill, removed the Black Rose from his council, and as far as we know, Vladimir once again went into hiding for that 20-year period. But with Darkwill's recent death at the hands of Swain, he's once again become active in frontline politics, and there are those that remember him and find it a bit weird that Vladimir hasn't really aged at all, and weirder still, he's training up a bunch of young mages on how to use blood magic, which by all accounts he hasn't done before, at least we don't have any record of that. This new group of blood mages call themselves the Crimson Circle, and they're amassing a degree of influence and power which could, in theory, give Vladimir an avenue to reach his goals away and separately to the Black Rose, but we actually just don't know. Is the Crimson Circle sort of a subset of the Black Rose? We just don't know. What these goals are from Vlad, though, are a bit of a mystery. I'd expect them to be similar to LeBlanc's, which I theorize is to keep Mordekaiser dead and buried until they can amass enough power to defeat him, but maybe not. Maybe they're completely at odds with each other, and we just don't know. It's all a mystery. Now, that would be the end of the video, but I'm writing these during Season 15, and so we've gotten some wonderful new lore on Vladimir in a post-Arcane world. So let's just quickly go through that. The main thing is that Vladimir is still very much in league with the Blanc, and they discuss how they failed to convert Mel into a Black Rose agent, and Vladimir suggests that they utilize Mel in some way going forward. But the Blanc doesn't want to do this. She instead suggests they focus their efforts elsewhere, before the camera pans and settles on this image that I'll show you on screen now. Vladimir states that this is going too far before he's overruled by LeBlanc, essentially, showing that LeBlanc is indeed the leader of this alliance. And now this blade that you're seeing on screen could be a few things. Number one, it could be Riven's sword, which is an enchanted rune blade that's pretty powerful. LeBlanc actually enchanted that herself. Or two, and I think this might be more likely, I'm not really sure, is that this is a Darkin blade, which is why it has this little eye-looking thing on it, as all Darkin weapons seem to have. And Vladimir's apprehension about this is perhaps because he knows what the Darkin are capable of, having worked for one some several thousand years ago at this point, and he's lived that experience firsthand, and this could be a callback all the way to his origins as a blood mage and as a servant of a Darkin that he doesn't really want to go back to. I also like the idea that it's both, and perhaps Riven's runeblade is actually a Darkin runeblade, which might be why LeBlanc is so set on getting it back from Riven in her lore, but that's a video for another time. I'll do a video on Riven separately. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you kindly for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one whenever I get around to putting one out. Thank you, and goodbye.